Security guards shoot a person outside CIA headquarters in Langley. Incident non-fatal and under investigation. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas thanks Lebanon for supporting Palestinian rights and two-state solution. And U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and State Department Director Michael Anton traveled to Rome for fifth round of nuclear talks with Iran. Security guards have shot a person outside CIA headquarters in Langley in Virginia. The shooting was not fatal according to sources. A CIA spokesperson confirmed a security incident occurred but did not provide further details. The incident took place at around 800 GMT, prompting the CIA to close the main gate and advise employees to use alternative routes. There is no link between this incident and the recent shooting of two Israeli embassy staffers. Two staff members from the Israeli embassy were fatally shot outside the Capital Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C. The incident took place near the intersection of 3rd and F Streets, close to both FBI field office and the U.S. Attorney's office. Authorities quickly sealed off the area, redirecting traffic and deploying a heavy police presence. U.S. President Donald Trump has strongly condemned the deadly shooting near the Capitol Jewish Museum in Washington. In a post on Truth Social, President Trump described the incident as a horrific act of anti-Semitism that must end immediately. He offered his condolences to the families of the victim, adding that hatred and extremism have no place in the United States. Trump expressed deep sorrow over the attack and called for unity in confronting such violence. The Washington Metropolitan Police Department has confirmed that the suspect in Wednesday's night's fatal shooting outside the Capitol Jewish Museum chanted "Free Palestine" while in custody. Police Chief Pamela Smith identified the gunman as 30-year-old Elias Rodriguez. She said he was seen pacing out the museum before approaching the victims and opening the 3rd and F Streets in northwest D.C. He was taken into custody inside the museum by on-site security personnel, and authorities later recovered the firearm used in the attack. The police added that a full investigation is underway.
By a single suspect who is now in custody. Prior to the shooting, the suspect was observed pacing back and forth outside of the museum.
And for more analysis, we now move to Mark Summers in our newsroom. Mark.
Thank you very much, Mona. And for more on these incidents, we are joined by Richard Schmierer, who is the President Emeritus at the Middle East Policy Council, joining us from Washington, D.C. Welcome to Q News. So we have this latest shooting incident outside Langley, where the CIA is based. What are the implications of a shooting incident like this?
Well, certainly any time a security incident of this nature takes place in front of or near CIA headquarters, it's taken very seriously. And obviously, in this case, someone approached the gate, crashed into the gate, and as a result, the security guards fired at the vehicle and injured the person driving. However, at this point, it appears more likely that this is a case of someone who was driving under the influence of alcohol, was probably lost, and probably ended up there by mistake. There's no indication that this individual had an agenda or has any kind of background which would suggest that she is a security threat or was seeking to cause harm.
Okay, we've had other incidents using terrorist incidents with people using vehicles as a weapon, but you're saying that in this instance, it doesn't look like that's the case, just a drunk driver.
That's what it appears to be. The reason that seems to be the case is that this individual, who has been identified as a prior history of arrest for drunk driving, and has no indication of any kind of political agenda or has indicated that she was there trying to cause harm. So those two facts put together are indicating initially, obviously the investigation continues, but initially it looks like that's what happened. It was a case of someone driving under the influence, being lost, and accidentally crashing into the gate of the CIA.
Now, of course, the timing of this incident is difficult because, of course, we had the shooting of the Israeli embassy staffers in Washington, D.C. What is the latest that we know about that, and how shocking is an event like that to happen on the streets of the Capitol?
Well, certainly you're absolutely correct. The fact that the incident at the CIA took place just hours after the incident at the Jewish Museum really had everyone on high alert. And the incident at the museum, unfortunately, is a real tragedy. Two very innocent young people were gunned down. The person taken into custody was shouting various political slogans. And so, unfortunately, it looks like that was a targeted attack against individuals at that facility based on a political motive. And that's something that we really don't want to see here in the U.S.
And do you think, based on what happened there yesterday, that this might be the start of more events like this? We've had lots of students protesting on campuses, the same kind of slogans that this person in D.C. was shouting about freeing Palestine. We now seem that it's moved over to a more violent way of protest.
Well, you're exactly right. There's great concern that what has been peaceful protests, and as you know, Americans are allowed to conduct peaceful protests on whatever issues they're interested in, that it is now spilled over into this violent incident. I am hopeful, and I frankly believe that this will cause people to actually pull back from heated rhetoric and from any attempted violence. I think most Americans are extremely upset to see such a thing happen and will make an extra effort to try to ensure that they are not involved in inciting or encouraging anything like this, even if they continue to protest specific policies.
With the situation at Langley at the CIA, even though it looks like it wasn't a motivated attack and was something quite different, the way that the security there responded to this incident, is that the general way that they would normally handle such an event?
Well, clearly they couldn't determine ahead of time exactly what the threat was. And I do believe the fact that the incident took place at the Jewish Museum just a few hours earlier probably had them on higher alert than normal. And certainly any effort by someone to crash through the CIA front gate will draw such a response. Now, the shooting was not fatal, so clearly they were looking simply to disable and to stop this individual, and the individual is expected to recover. So yes, I think that is to the expected way that they would respond to such an incident, in particular when it occurred.
Well, thank you very much for your thoughts on these incidents. That's Richard Schmierer, who is the President Emeritus at the Middle East Policy Council, joining us from D.C.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And it's back to you, Mona.
Thank you so much, Mark, for the analysis. And now we moved on to the latest developments in Gaza. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has met Lebanese Speaker Nabi Berri in Beirut, expressing gratitude for Lebanon's support of Palestinian rights and the two-state solution. Abbas reaffirmed Palestine's respect for Lebanon's sovereignty, noting that refugees in Lebanon are temporary guests. He also briefed Berri on the ongoing Israeli aggression in Gaza and the West Bank. The two leaders agreed to form a joint committee to enhance relations and improve conditions for Palestinian refugees in Lebanon. Palestinian Health Minister Majid Abu Ramadan reported that 29 deaths, including children and the elderly in Gaza, were starvation-related in recent days, with thousands more at risk. He confirmed the toll included both children and the elderly in response to the UN and chief's warnings that 14,000 babies could die without aid, Ramadan stated. The number 14,000 is very realistic, maybe even an underestimation. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has condemned Israel's action in Gaza, claiming that the country is becoming globally isolated due to its campaign of starvation. Erdogan stated history will hold accountable those who failed the Gaza test. Turkey stands with humanity and will continue to do so. Erdogan emphasized that the Gaza crisis is not just a humanitarian issue, but also a test of the international system's sincerity, accusing Western institutions of failing to act. A bakery in Gaza's Deir al-Balah has resumed operations after receiving much-needed flour supplies. Thanks to aid from the World Food Programme, workers were seen preparing and packing bread for distribution to vulnerable communities. While bakeries in the south of Gaza have resumed work, operations in the northern regions remain suspended. WFP Deputy Country Director for Gaza emphasized the dire humanitarian situation in Gaza, which has suffered from more than 2 months of border closures. He urged for continued humanitarian aid and open crossings to reach those in urgent need. The WFP's shipment of flour is part of a broader effort to address the severe shortages caused by an 11-week blockade. An Israeli army spokesperson has ordered residents of northern Gaza, including Beit Lahia and Jabalia refugee camp, to evacuate immediately, declaring these areas as dangerous combat zones. The spokesperson added that the Israeli military plans to significantly expand its operations in these regions. Israel has rejected international calls to halt the war and reach a detainee release deal with Hamas. On Saturday, it launched Operations Gideon Shariat, significantly escalating its 19-month offensive. The ICC prosecutor's office has opposed Israel's request to withdraw arrest warrants for Prime Minister Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Gallant, stating there is no legal basis. The court has determined their actions fall under its jurisdiction with responsible grounds to believe they are responsible for war crimes in Gaza. Israel's challenge to the court's jurisdiction was dismissed on November 2024, and the prosecutor urged judges to proceed with the investigation. The arrest warrants were issued in November 2024, and U.S. sanctions were imposed on the ICC in February 2025. Dozens of Israeli settlers protected by Israeli police have stormed the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound located in occupied East Jerusalem. The settlers, Israeli citizens residing illegally on Palestinian lands in the occupied West Bank and East Jerusalem, are part of a larger pattern of tension in the region. Additionally, a settler reportedly attacked a shrine at the Ma'man Allah cemetery in occupied East Jerusalem. Israel's Supreme Court has ruled that Prime Minister Netanyahu's decision to fire domestic security chief Ronen Bar was unlawful. The court stated the termination was made through an improper process and Netanyahu had a conflict of interest as the Shin Bet was investigating alleged ties between the PM's aides and Qatar. The dispute between Netanyahu and Bar escalated following the October 7th event, with Netanyahu citing a breakdown in trust as the reason for the dismissal. However, Bar linked the decision to events between November 2024 and February 2025. And now we go on air for a broadcast to a statement by the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Palestinian state, from which Hamas will again seek to destroy the Jewish state. And mind you, it's not going to be a state free of Hamas. When you establish a Palestinian state, we've seen it. The radicals take over. Iran sends them in and they take over. So don't give us this talk. It'll be a peaceful Palestinian state. It won't be. But the hypocrisy doesn't stop there. These and other leaders have bought into Hamas's propaganda that says Israel is starving Palestinian children. And not only is Hamas putting out this lie, a few days ago, a top UN official said that 14,000 Palestinian babies would die in 48 hours. You see, many international institutions are complicit in spreading this lie. The press repeats it, the mob believed it, and a young couple is then brutally gunned down in Washington. So here are the facts. Since October 7th, Israel has sent 92,000 aid trucks into Gaza. That's right, 92,000 aid trucks. That includes 1.8 million tons of aid. 1.8 million tons of aid. More than enough food to feed everyone in Gaza. Yet as we had let the aid come in, Hamas stole it. They took a huge chunk for themselves. The rest they sold at exorbitant prices to the Palestinian population. And then they used the money they stole to recruit new terrorists to continue their war against Israel. Our goal from the start was to get food to Palestinian civilians, not to Palestinian terrorists. So we consulted with our American allies. What do we do to prevent Hamas from looting the aid? Well, together we devised a mechanism to achieve this goal. American companies will distribute the food directly to Palestinian families. They'll do so in safe zones secured by our military. And this will allow us to complete our goal of destroying Hamas while enabling aid to reach the civilian population. We'll complete the construction of the first distribution zones in the coming days. Ultimately, we intend to have large safe zones in the south of Gaza, and the Palestinian population will move there for their own safety while we conduct combat in other zones and receive humanitarian aid there without Hamas interference. In the meantime, we authorized letting trucks enter Gaza to provide for immediate needs. Yesterday, I think more than 100 trucks went in. More will come in today. I tell you this, no army in the world has ever gone to such lengths to provide aid to the civilian population in the midst of intense combat. And Hamas, of course, opposes this. It shoots Palestinian civilians who want to leave for safe zones, and it shoots Palestinian civilians who want to prevent Hamas terrorists from looting the aid trucks intended for them. As for the hostages, we'll do every effort to secure them. I'm ready for a temporary ceasefire to get more out, but we demand, and you should demand, that all of our hostages be released, and released immediately. And so should every civilized country demand this. We're in an intense seven-front war that was launched against us by Iran and its proxies. Sometimes in war, accidents happen. One such incident happened the other day in Jenin, and thankfully no one was hurt. Our military has expressed its regret over the event because we don't target civilians or diplomats. We target terrorists. Exactly the opposite of Hamas. They target civilians, ours, and they hide behind civilians, theirs. They use them as human shields. That's a double war crime. But I don't hear that coming from any one of those countries that criticize Israel. For those who say that Israel stands alone, I say we're not alone. Justice stands with us. The truth stands with us. History stands with us. And so do countless people around the world who can tell the difference between right and wrong, between good and evil. I want to thank all of them. And I especially want to thank President Trump and the American people for their forthright stand with Israel and with the Jewish people. Together we stand, together we'll triumph, and we'll see the victory of civilization over barbarism.
These were statements made by the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in which he denied reports that Israel has kept the Palestinian civilians and population under starvation, and reports made that they were killing babies, including those reports of the 14,000 babies that were killed. He said that that Israel has allowed 92,000 trucks, meaning 1.8 million tons of aid into the Palestinian territories. He allegedly accused Hamas of stealing aid and selling them and bringing weapons with their money. He said that the safe areas were supporting and will continue to support Palestinian movements to receive aid while the military forces operate in other areas. He also accused Hamas of using civilians as human shields, allegedly accused them of using civilians as human shields, and he thanked the US and President Trump for standing with Israel so far. Well, back to our bulletin, and a source has reported that US Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, and State Department Policy Planning Director Michael Anton will travel to Rome on Friday for a fifth round of nuclear talks with Iran. The source said discussions are expected to be both direct and indirect, as in previous rounds. Washington and Tehran have been engaged in direct and indirect for several weeks now, after President Donald Trump announced he wanted to reach a new deal to stave off potential military action against Iran's nuclear program. Despite setting a 2-month deadline, Trump's top diplomat Marco Rubio said this week that reaching a deal will not be easy. And into Russia, Russia's defense ministry has announced that its forces captured the village of Nova Poltovka in Ukraine's eastern Donetsk region, about 23 kilometers northeast of Pokrovsk, a key front in the conflict. Moscow has reported territorial gains in Donetsk amid intensifying fighting, particularly around Pokrovsk, which is crucial for Ukraine's military logistics. Ukraine's General Staff reported repelling 54 assaults near Pokrovsk front, including at Nova Poltovka. Ukrainian authorities have not yet responded to Russia's claims, and independent verification remains challenging. To Pakistan, Pakistan's Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif said that Saudi Arabia could serve as a neutral venue for talks between Pakistan and India. The statement came as tensions between the nuclear-armed neighbors remain high over long-standing disputes, including Kashmir. Sharif, however, ruled out China as a potential mediator, signaling a possible shift in Islamabad's diplomatic strategy. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi stated that Pakistan will not receive water from the rivers over which India holds rights. Modi declared that Pakistan will pay a heavy price for every terrorist attack, which will be borne by the Pakistani army and the Pakistani economy. That brings us to the end of our news bulletin. Here is what we've been covering. Security guards shoot a person outside CIA headquarters in Langley. Incident non-fatal and under investigation. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas thanks Lebanon for supporting Palestinian rights and two-state solution. And U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and State Department Director Michael Anton traveled to Rome for fifth round of nuclear talks with Iran. This concludes our news bulletin for the hour. Don't forget to follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at Qnews EGY to stay informed. Many thanks for watching and good night.